Good morning. Well, thank you for listening in on this Sunday after Veterans Day. We're celebrating veterans, celebrating those who served. Many of your friends who are veterans probably went out and got some free food and enjoyed maybe some time with others who have served their nation together, but not all veterans are in full health to enjoy everything that Veterans Day has to offer. There are veterans who are facing health problems, many of whom are treated in our VA hospitals. There are veterans who struggle with PTSD and other mental health challenges, both as outpatients and as they're supporting one another in online groups or in places like the VA Center up in Minot, or sometimes they need extra help and go to the VA in Fargo or other places. As many of you know, this summer I went to North Carolina. The journey begins, and I was blessed to accompany some veterans on their journey to better health. It's about 1,600 miles from Plaza, and it was a hike. Got to enjoy some time with my son on the way to Chicago, and then he went back via train. Along the way, though, got to see some interesting people. Of course, there's the Bradells. They were in Ohio. There is my cousin, Tim, who I stayed with. I was blessed to stay with him. He's the son of a veteran, and yes, he does look like Opie Taylor, but that works pretty well in North Carolina. In our gospel lesson, Jesus talks about how the temple will be torn down and in 3 days it would be built back again. It reminds me of the many conversations I had with veterans, and they talked about boot camp and being torn down and built up again as a soldier, a Marine, a seaman, or an airman. And at the Asheville VA, we saw many people being built up both emotionally, mentally, and physically, as we saw veterans who received new prosthetic limbs, new wheelchairs, received job-seeking help finding housing, and my little branch of the tree, helping people find a new sense of purpose and exploring how spirituality can be an important building block in their lives. So first day I hadn't even started the job, I just got my badge, and this gentleman came up to me and told me something really powerful about a prognosis he had received. And so people were willing to share their joys and sorrows with us as chaplains. I guess you might notice that there's something missing from this presentation about veterans. So we don't have any pictures because privacy laws didn't allow me to take any pictures of our veterans, but might seem a little bit different. So I decided I'll share with some pictures of my uncle, my dad, my other uncle who is now in glories of heaven, and my cousin who lives there just about an hour and a half away in Georgia. So what are chaplains? Why was I there? I was there to learn about being a chaplain. I was there with 5 other students. There are some awesome people: Brandon, Emily, Joe, and Evan. 3 of them besides Joe and myself, of course, go to seminary right there within about 100 miles in Virginia or the Carolinas. Joe goes up to school in Harvard at a divinity school. And of course, I'm in the school of life. And so I was honored to be able to spend time with them. Also, we had 5 other residents, which were a joy. We were just blessed. This guy was kind of a joker, but blessed with 5 other residents who spent a full year with our veterans. There's our chapel right outside. To the right-hand side, you'd find is where we had our office. It kind of had some cubicles. We had to be spread out because of COVID, and we were wearing masks all the time. But yeah, it was kind of fun. We made calls. We charted notes talking about the progress that the people we were working with made. But ironically, we didn't get to lead chapel. Worship was canceled due to COVID, but I was blessed. On the 4th of July, I was on call, and I was invited by Chaplain Jeremiah, one of the full-time staff, one of 5 full-time chaplains that serves this hospital with about 300 beds, and then added on community living center, which is the nursing care facility. That's where we got to lead worship, and that was a great joy and honor on the 4th of July. So what do we do? Well, prayer, devotions, gave some Bible studies, listening ear, got to lead a few groups that help people in their journey. I provided a lot of Bibles, though. I'm guessing that I gave away between 50 and 75 Bibles and a few other scriptures this summer. And I had the opportunity to hear from people from many different faiths and dozens of different Christian denominations. Of course, you know that Asheville's right smack dab in the middle of the Bible Belt, only minutes away from Montreat, where Billy Graham had a home. And actually, we're only minutes away from Billy Graham Training Center at the Cove, which was just right around the corner. On the way to the Cove, you would pass the Veterans Restoration Quarters, which was used to be a Holiday Inn, I believe, and now it's where homeless veterans can receive housing, can receive training, can receive some assistance if they have addiction problems in getting a new life. And so that's an important group that works with the VA in helping our veterans in need. I worked this summer in the RU, or the Warrior Recovery Unit. Also, I worked in our 28-day program called the SART, Substance Abuse Recovery Treatment Program. And so sometimes they went together. So the room for where we had some of our different group times when people would share really deeply and talk about how they want to change their life or just talk about some of the difficult times they face in their life. That was just through this class, and where we'd come and have a moment to just share some of the pains and sorrows and the joys that life brought us. And also one of the favorite places is this little alcove. It's one of the only places where you have a panoramic view of the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains outside. And the incredible thing is that the veterans on this Warrior Recovery Unit, it was a locked unit for their own safety. They weren't able to leave, but it would let them get outside, get some fresh air, even though it had a horrible noise because the air conditioner was going all the time. It just let them get a little fresh air, a little bit of perspective, and see the beauty of God's creation all around them. But if you want to know, all the furniture at the Warrior Recovery Unit is heavy. I think those chairs weigh like 200 pounds. They want to make sure nobody would lift them up or try to hurt themselves or others. And of course, the bluebird reminds us that that was their sense of connection with the outside. How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him who brings good news, Jesus Christ. The good news of peace and salvation, the good news that the God of Israel reigns. And there are the beautiful, beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains. But some of those who fought for freedom are still seeking freedom from addiction, PTSD, and other mental health challenges. Of course, we know about drug and alcohol addiction. That's something that happens in everyday life. Veterans share some of the same challenges each of us have. And sometimes they went hand in hand. In medical jargon, that's called a co-occurring diagnosis. So they had mental health challenges and addiction. And PTSD is probably the most well-known. It can just stop people in their tracks. Sometimes it can bring people who have been in combat situations right back there to the war. So we were part of an interdisciplinary team that served the veterans in need. We had medical staff, nurses, doctors. We had mental health staff, and our psychiatrists, they actually were a little bit of both. They're medical doctors and have the psychology background. But we had psychologists, we had nurse practitioners, and others who had a special experience in working with people who are struggling with their mental health. And so as a chaplain, I was blessed because I was able to offer the spiritual perspective, and I was part of that team, and it was really awesome to learn so much, and sometimes just to be able to share something that maybe sometimes our mental health and medical professionals didn't see because they weren't seeing it from the perspective of faith. So as chaplains, we were there to help people with the spiritual part of their lives, help them find the tools. So we were one team with one common goal, and that goal is to help those with difficult times in their life as they faced illness, disability, mental health, or sobriety issues, even end-of-life issues, because we also had a hospice care team. So in a non-judgmental way, we wanted to help people develop the tools that they need, that for better mental health, for sobriety, for just better health in general. And we always did so in a non-judgmental way, showing respect for all veterans whom we saw especially as chaplains, as children of God, brothers and sisters in Christ. But it didn't matter what their faith perspective was. I was there to help all. Some of the tools we had, ironically, some of the tools we were teaching about were tools that we needed to learn more about ourselves and apply to ourselves. We got away a little bit. We went to a beautiful place where we could just be in God's creation, and you can see we had some time to spend in a labyrinth and just explore our own thoughts in the midst of silence. Sometimes it feels like we're trapped in a maze or it's like a rat race. And so sometimes a labyrinth is a place where you can realize, no, I can go slowly and just think about what's next. And we also got to take an awesome field trip as we went to Horse Sense of the Carolinas. That horse reminded me a lot of my horse, and I missed a little bit of home, but horses can be an amazing way of reflecting on what's happening in someone's life. And right now we have the Healing Horse Ranch just north and a little west of Parshall, and the 3 affiliated tribes is doing some of that work as well. Also, part of my own therapy was on my commute, about 45 minutes. I get to ride about half that time on the Blue Ridge Parkway, and it was beautiful, beautiful place. And so in the morning, as I prepared for work, my heart got a little more settled because I got off and then I was right there at the VA. And in the evening, the first 10 or 15 minutes of my drive were right there, kind of helped me leave behind some of the concerns. I also was honored because I got to help honor the life of one of our veterans, a Vietnam era veteran. I got to preside over his funeral at the Veterans Cemetery in Black Mountain, North Carolina, about 15 minutes to the east of Asheville. Of course, there's Charles George, the namesake. Like many of the VA facilities, they're named for heroes. And Charles George was an Army private who jumped on a grenade during the Korean War and saved his squad mates. I had the honor of meeting many heroes, and at the end of my time this summer, the men on the substance abuse 28-day program, one of the gentlemen said, "Thank you for spending your deployment with us this summer." Never really thought about it, but being away from family and your support is kind of a little bit like those who've been in the military. Of course, not the same. But I want to thank all of you back home in North Dakota while I was in North Carolina for your continued support of me. And I want to thank all of you for your continued support of our veterans. Thank you to all of our veterans who continue to serve our communities and our nation. And we pray for all of our active duty folks as well. Jesus said that the temple would be destroyed and not one stone would remain upon another. War has a way of destroying peace, sense of safety, destroying our view of the world, but many veterans have taken the stones from their lives that were thrown down and they have allowed God to rebuild them. Maybe not in 3 days, as the 3 bells might imply, but over a period of time, they've rebuilt their lives. We ask that God continue to support those who serve our veterans in the VA and many other places like the Veterans Restoration Quarters. We ask that God continue to work on your hearts, that you might always have a heart for veterans as you have a heart for all of God's people. Amen.